All right. Today on the Franklin Community High School Career Exploration Project, we have with us John Byerly, and John is the America's Transportation Manager for Cummins. So, John, first of all, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Describe your role a little bit. What's your current role? What do you do, and any other jobs you've had before this that have led up to it?
Well, currently my role is to manage the transportation for the freight carriers for the Cummins engine business unit facilities, mainly ones that are located all throughout southern Indiana, one in Jamestown, New York, and then one in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. I also have responsibility for our couple of new divisions we have, which is kind of exciting for us. It's the electrification and the fuel cell business. So electric power instead of diesel power.
Yeah.
And then I also have responsibility for our group that create all of our export documents.
Okay.
So those are my main responsibilities.
How have you seen your has your role changed at all since the kind of the push towards the electric motors and anything like that?
Well, not really. It's just the push towards the electrification side is a relatively new business for Cummins. It's probably only been in existence 3 or 4 years, and we're still ramping up production in those two businesses. So those are small volumes of what I manage compared to our traditional business, but it's an exciting business because I think it's the future for Cummins.
Yeah, that's very exciting. Just with all the new options and opportunities you'd have with that. So, what kind of education or training did you have to start in the I guess logistics business? Would that be accurate?
Yeah, that would be a very accurate statement. By trade, I am a licensed customs broker. And so what that means is that I have a license granted by the U.S. government, which allows me to create the paperwork and the forms that are allowed and required for international freight to come in to clear U.S. customs. I did that for Cummins for 12 years. And then over the last 8 years, I've moved into transportation. So that customs broker's license is something I got post-graduation from college. I majored in international business from Ball State. I graduated in 1989, and then I went back and got my master's through Indiana Wesleyan, and I got my master's in 1997, something there. So I have 2 post-high school degrees, both of which I have used and probably wouldn't be in the position that I am in today without that educational background.
Right. So what kind of led you to logistics, but also the business part of it? Was it something that you've always known or you've always been interested, or what led you this direction?
Well, what led me into international business was when I was in college in the late 80s. I simply just did some research and looked into the top growth industries in the 90s and the 2000s. And the first one, the largest growing industry for the predictions at the time was care for the elderly. And I wasn't interested in that. And second was care for youngsters, and I wasn't interested in that. And third was international business. So I knew Ball State had a degree through the business program in international business, and I just walked over and signed up for it. So basically, I just did some research for what those growth opportunities would be over the next 10 to 15 to 20 years, and looked at those and found one that I liked and just kind of ran with it. That'd be a recommendation I'd give to all high school students. Don't just think about what's hot today, but as you go on and get either your college degree or whatever path you take going forward, look 5 to 10 years down the road as to where the growth industries are going to be. Pick one that you like then and work towards it. So when that time arrives, you'll have all the qualifications that you need to get started in that.
Absolutely. I think that's a huge key, is just making sure that you look down the road at a job that's going to be there, 10 to 15 years down the road. And it's very important. And that was that's a step that I don't know if a whole lot of college kids would have taken. So, did someone kind of point you in that direction, or was that just you all on your own?
Well, to be honest with you, it was coming up on the end of my sophomore year, and I had not declared a major. So I got a letter from the university which says, "Hey, you need to declare a major, or we're going to kick you out." So I was like, "Well, okay, sounds like I better declare a major." So I just went through and just did some research. It wasn't difficult. It was just some research at the library and some newspaper articles at the time, a good old-fashioned paper magazine at the time. I imagine right now anybody could pretty much just Google and look at top growth industries for 2030 and beyond, and I'm sure it'll give you all kinds of results.
Yeah, kids these days don't know anything about the paper magazines and the newspaper classifieds, do they?
No, and that's okay, because it's a new world we live in, and IT continues to advance forward. But I would say the important thing is that the students at the high school have that initiative and have that forward-thinking approach to look that far in advance instead of, what's going to be good tomorrow, because you're going to be in the workforce for the next 30 to 40 years, and you're going to need to have an educational background and in an industry that will be around in 30 to 40 years.
Yeah.
For example, if you were in the printing press industry with newspapers and I had gotten a degree in that, where would I be now? There's hardly anything that really goes in print anymore.
Yeah. So as far as your job goes, obviously it's something you enjoy. Tell us some of the things you enjoy most, and a couple like things that you don't necessarily, some of the cons, I guess, about it.
Well, I'm very blessed in the role that I have now, working for a Fortune 500 such as Cummins. There's always a lot of new projects that we're working on. I've given you one example, and we talked briefly about the electrification business. We're also currently changing our aftermarket distribution channels, and we're moving some warehouses around. So as you move warehouses around, you have to have the trucks available to actually move the material, and then you have to set out your outbound plan to ship to your customers. So I would say the thing that I like most about my role right now is the new projects and the new challenges that seem to always come down the road, because that's what kind of keeps you fresh and not doing the same thing over and over every day. I would say my biggest con right now in the market is just dealing with what COVID has brought on to us. There's a lot of freight to be moved and not a lot of carriers out there to move it right now. So it's a battle to find the right carriers at the right price that can do the job for you. And on top of just the normal business challenges that we have as far as volumes and weather and supplier moves, with what COVID has done to the country over the last 9 months to a year, it's really presented a lot of challenges that are very unfortunate, but just something that you have to deal with.
Right, absolutely. Just always adapting and going with what the world is giving you. So as far as just maybe personality types or type of person who's looking for a job in transportation and logistics, what would be a good type for you? Someone maybe who you would look for and say, yeah, they would, I think, do really well. And what would maybe be a person who would not necessarily be as successful or may find some difficulty in this profession?
Well, I would say the type of person in the transportation industry that you have to have is someone that shows a sense of urgency. Cummins has kind of a thing here, kind of a personality or a motto where every order needs to be perfect, from how you pick it to how you ship it to when it gets there to when it arrives damage free, as to when the invoice sent to the customer is sent timely and it's accurate. So having a sense of urgency in making sure that every order, every part shipment, every engine shipment is correct and meeting the standards of Cummins is very, very important. So having what would be the right way to put this? Having, that sense of urgency and that desire to do the best job that you can every day is very, very important. I would say the kind of person that would not fit well in transportation is just, kind of the opposite of that. The person that doesn't necessarily want to work hard, that doesn't necessarily want to accept the challenge of being the best that you can be every day. Because in the world of transportation and the entire world of supply chain, it's just getting more and more difficult every day. And so being willing to get up every morning and realize that those challenges are going to be there every day and doing the best job that you can are really the most important things. Having a solid attitude and wanting to learn is probably the most important thing, because I've been worked for Cummins now for over 20 years. I worked for another large importer called Thompson Consumer Electronics, which was RCA and GE for the consumer electronics. And I can tell you that I'm still learning. I could probably sit back today and tell you something I learned today about Cummins. So that desire to continue to learn, because once you get the job, it's not the end of a journey, it's just the start of a journey. And so in my story, even after I graduated from college, I went back and got my master's. I got my customs broker's license, and then Cummins started a program called Six Sigma, which we had to complete 3 different projects in order to be able to be eligible to get a promotion and get paid for that promotion. Mm-hmm. And so Six Sigma was a very statistically driven, math driven kind of thing that I had to complete 3 projects to do. So I went through and got certified from Six Sigma as both a belt and a sponsor. So, the challenge to continue to learn is there every day, and probably will be until the day I retire.
Yeah, that's something key that a lot of people have touched on, is just the ability and the desire to keep learning and keep growing and never stop learning. So that's something that a lot of people have hit on in these interviews I've done. As far as
it's a constant.
Yeah, as far as preparing for your profession and a career in this field, what would you recommend, or any classes someone could take in high school, or what would be a recommendation for you?
Well, I mean, if you're interested in what I do, most colleges and universities now have a supply chain management type of program. And so supply chain management means packaging and transportation and order management and warehousing, pick, pack, and ship. So transportation is part of that. And I would say if you're interested in any part of what I just mentioned, from order management to inventory management, a degree through a supply chain program is one that would be very valuable to you. I know that there are Ohio State has a very good supply chain program. Tennessee Knoxville does. So, I mean, there are lots of universities now that are starting to see the value in supply chain degrees. And so that would be my recommendation there.
Okay. And then last question for you, we'll get you out with this one. Just any general advice that you have for high school students?
Any general advice I have for high school students? Well, we touched on looking forward and being prepared for what's going to come down the road 5 or 10 years. The general advice that I would give high school students is that graduation from high school is not the end, it's just a start. And so whether you care about supply chain management, or you want to go on to be a fireman or a teacher or a doctor, continue your education, continue to grow, whether that's through a university, whether that's through a community college, whether it's through a trade program, or whatever next step that is. You need to do your best that you can right now today to figure out what that step is, and then go execute your plan. When you graduate from high school, you've still got hopefully 40, 50, 60 years of your life to lead. And so the choices that you made in high school are going to be impactful of that. But the choices that you make 4 or 5 years after you graduate are really going to set the path for the career and the way that you're going to live the remainder of your life. So make those choices now. If you miss on it and you change your mind, that's okay. But continue to work on it and continue to grow and continue to get as much education as you possibly can.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, always keep growing, always keep learning and keep looking at different opportunities. And I'm sure that Cummins probably has a bunch of programs as well where you're able to gain other positions, not necessarily with as much of an education as other people, just based off of programs that they have in place. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. One of the requirements that I have is that I have to take 20 hours of continuing education each year. And again, I'm blessed because what Cummins provides is something called a supply chain academy. So I can basically go out and take these courses, which ends up being, I don't know, I'm trying to remember, 40 or 50 hours annually, something like that, where you go through and you just get your continued education. And the best part of that is I can take that in materials management. I can take it in finance. I can take it in procurement and purchasing. I can take it in whatever topics that are of interest to me. So it's a requirement and it's a burden. But I mean, at the end of the day, I'm glad that I do it every year because I continue to learn things about it. And once I'm done with a certain amount of hours, I'll be a certified supply chain specialist, I believe the title is. Mm-hmm. And so that's just something else that I can add to my list of continuing education accomplishments.
All right. Well, John, once again, thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us here and your knowledge for this. We really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you. It's been my privilege to be able to talk to you a little bit, and good luck with your journey here. And I hope that the last 10 or 15 minutes have been beneficial to some folks along the way. So thank you for having me.
Definitely, very much so. Once again, John Byelry, America's Transportation Manager for Cummins.